The broadcast is now starting. All attendees
Good
are in
afternoon.
listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar from formationsdirect.com. My name is Norman Younger. I think some of you know me, judging by the list of attendees. I'm pleased to report we've had a very good turnout today for this Selling Your Practice webinar from our Kensington division. Okay, so let's start to move forward. And by the way, if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please feel free to type them in, and either myself or my assistant, Isaac, will answer them for you on the spot. And it goes without saying that you're welcome to call us or email us after the event. Well, the picture shows a shopping basket with business in it. Unfortunately, selling your practice is not as simple and as quick as that. So, however, we would like to think that were you to sell with us, we'd make it nice and smooth, a lot easier than pushing a supermarket trolley can be. So, the reason I assume that you're attending this webinar is that you've come to the decision that selling is the correct decision. It's a big move for people, for many sellers. It's a once in a lifetime move. It's in some ways, I suppose, it could be heralding it's a new era in people's life. Sometimes they'll be retiring, or they could be going into business and having had enough of being in practice. So you have to think about it very carefully. That's obviously your starting point. Like anything you wish to sell, you've got to know your markets. Everything has a price, and the price is determined by the market. Market's made up, of course, of buyers and sellers. I would say at the moment that sole trade, single practice accountants remain very, very popular. Partnerships, less so. A partnership, of course, can be more complicated. Some people make a very good go of partnerships, and therefore they're happy to buy into a partnership, which makes it easier for selling a partnership. But the critical point here to note is what the balance of supply and demand is. Like any products, if the demand outstrips the supply, the price will go up. With accountancy practices, demand outstrips the supply quite substantially, by 20 to 30 times perhaps. However, it does have there is a limit upon how high the price is going to go for an accountancy practice. What it does mean is that when sellers face buyers, they have more of a choice. They can pick and choose from who the buyers are. Obviously, there's various things they have to go through the due diligence, check the chemistry is correct, but don't think that the price is going to go through the roof just because the amount of buyers outstrips the sellers. Got a question. Paul from Essex wants to know, is now a good time to sell? I assume, Paul, that by that you mean a good time in terms of multiples, or the valuations rather, a good time for yourself. In terms of multiples, they are quite robust at the moment. We are selling things just now 1.2 times GRF, which stands for gross recurring fees. The gross recurring fees being the basis of the valuations. Some have gone a bit higher than that. If you've got a practice, perhaps the only one for many, many miles around, and you're in a prosperous market town and everybody knows this name, then it could well be you could be up to 1.4, 1.5, and possibly, for the lucky few, even head towards 2. That is highly unusual, and more likely where they've got a speciality and someone else wants to snap them up because of that speciality. The multiple can fall below 1 in a case where it's what we would describe as a fire sale, which is something we are going to discuss later on in the webinar. Where does the value lie? The value lies, of course, in the quality of the clients, and also to an extent in the quality of the advice your practice has got a reputation for. if you're known to be a pucker firm on the ball, then that will obviously help. You'll have good publicity. I've lost count of the number of times socially where people have said to me, Norman, I don't think my accountant's just giving me the advice I need. He never phones me up to ask how I'm doing, things like that. Why does he not give me tax planning opportunities? Why do I have to chase him? So that that gives an indication when people are complaining that the value in the practice is not as high as it could be. But in terms of clients, you've got to know, are these good clients? You may have started your practice 30 or 40 years ago when the clients were your friends perhaps, and they were building their business, and many of them may be coming up towards retirement. There are ethnic issues there. Some practices are predominantly, have a client mix predominantly of a particular ethnic area or something like that. And you'd expect a principal to be sympathetic and conversant with the values that group would want. So this is something which one does obviously have to bear in mind. And of course, using a broker, you'd expect the broker to do that as part of the service, to make sure they're only going to introduce people who they think are going to be a good fit or after a particular type of client. But I think at this early stage, it is important to get the expectations gap as narrow as possible, that the seller doesn't go in with unrealistic expectations in terms of how long it's going to take, what it's going to be like selling, and what he's going to get for it. And similarly, obviously, the buyer has to know what he's buying and what's expected of him. And at the bottom is broker costs. Everything has a cost in life. You get what you pay for, and obviously this is negotiated on a deal-by-deal basis. Typically, we would look to charge 3.75% for handling the sale of your practice to yourself. There would be a charge to the buyer as well, and that depends, of course, on the size of the practice. The larger it goes, obviously, the smaller your fee is going to be. About 18 months ago, we were involved in a multi-million-pound practice sale. Obviously, they got a very good deal out of us, but we still made money and everyone was happy. Horses for courses, that's what I would say on broker costs. The next question is, of course, when do you want to sell? At FD Kensington, we break this down into three units. Basically, there's people who wish to sell in less than 1 year, which is probably, within a year is a good time to get the ball rolling. Obviously, you've got to make sure your practice is up to scratch, which is we're going to touch on that. And people who'd like to sell beyond 1 year, perhaps they're looking at a wider horizon, perhaps they're heading towards their late 50s and they want to be retired mid to early 60s, but they need to start thinking. And the reason why they're thinking ahead is because they realize that they're going to have to stay around for a while if they want to get the best value from that sale. The way to get a low value for your practice is to want to sell it now, with 3 exclamation marks, or even yesterday. Obviously, that would be a fire sale, and you're probably looking at a valuation of 0.85 to 0.9, depending on the state of the practice and the reason behind why it is being sold in a hurry. So, on to the $64,000 question, which is the practice ready? I'm actually in the middle of putting together a webinar for autumn time, perhaps winter, which is entitled Preparing Your Practice for Sale. So we're going to touch on some of the basics here, but obviously we'll be in touch with you later in the year to go into more detail, because this is very, very important, because it's not quite a case of phoning up the decorators and giving the house a lick of paint because you want to sell it next week, or having an aroma of freshly ground coffee wafting through the house to make the buyers at home. There are things there which they take time. I suppose it's, for some practices, can be like turning around a superstructure. But let's have a wee look at some of these. The fee structure. I mean, typically, accountant is going to be charging by the hour, though some people have other ways of doing it. They'll charge perhaps according to how much tax they say they can save you, or perhaps a percentage of turnover if they can increase your turnover by giving you business advice. The main thing is that a buyer wants to see you've got a transparent fee structure, and it's not just, it's not just made up on the hoof, because they want to know whether they can get the same money on an ongoing basis. And of course, it's important to make sure you are charging the right money for the time which you're selling and the level of qualification. What's the client spread like? Some people only deal with a particular type of business. We have a client who I believe only at one point only specialised in a milkman. I think he had to broaden his client base with the demise of the daily milk round. Again, we had another client of ours who only dealt with sole traders, and some people are happier with limited companies. Got a question here from Graham from York. He's asking, does the buyer's fee structure need to match mine? Match the seller's fee structure? Not necessarily, Graham. However, you don't want to have any shock treatment for the existing clients that next year the bill is doubled, because yes, it's done fairly, but completely different basis. These sort of things you'd have to nurture the clients into over time, or perhaps the new clients which came on board as you grew the practice you're buying, you give them a different fee structure. Again, back to the client base, the ethnic spread, the age, what sort of culture. Some people deal perhaps with media clients, and they're kind of laid back, so people who perhaps may not pay quite, the creative types may not pay quite the same attention to bookkeeping and the detail which you would like to see from the clients you may be used to. So these things are important. Again, are you an easygoing kind of guy? Could you mix with the creative types? Are you more at home with the people who like to be playing golf on a Sunday morning? How efficient is your practice? That involves yourself. Where do you as a seller fit in? Are you there every day? Are you there once a week? Sweating the assets. How much? What do you get out of your staff? How well is their time utilised? And my favourite one at the bottom is the cobbler going barefoot. Are your accounts up to date? Are your books neat and tidy? Do you collect your debts? Do you look after your clients? Do you answer the phone? All these sort of things. Okay, some food for thought there for you all. Okay, so what sort of methods have we got for selling? The first screen here, well, we discussed someone who wants out quickly, a fire sale. Typically it'd be a one-off payment, a lump sum, and a clawback in the region of 3 months. We tend to find the fire sale, unfortunately, is where someone has a serious illness or a terminal illness, and they know their time is limited on this earth, and they want to get the best for their nearest and dearest, and they want to just get it off their heads. We do have these. Obviously, we like to think we deal sympathetically with people and understand where they're coming from. But fortunately, it doesn't happen too often. Jason from Manchester is asking for a definition of clawback. Jason, yeah, I'm sorry for that. We take these terms for granted in the office. It's probably something which you've not heard too often. The clawback is basically what you as a seller would have to give back to a buyer within a defined time on a contract where clients not to stay on, ready to move away. Obviously, the buyer is expected to look after things in a normal way, and it can come to blows if the buyer has politely messed things up. The traditional sale, you're looking around about 18 months of payments staged over that 18 months during which the clawback would apply, and we can reasonably expect that you are on hand during that time. It's in your interest, perhaps the first month or two, to be on hand to a greater extent than after 12 months have gone by. But this seems to be what people, both sides, like to have. And you've got a bespoke sale, which is where you need a rather innovative approach to things. A message just come up here. We don't have speakers. Is there a number we can call to listen? Unfortunately, there's no phone number to phone us up. If you send me your email address, we will email you back, and we can get you a copy. We are recording this, and we will speak to you afterwards. Okay, the last one we're discussing here is the bespoke method, and now we pride ourselves on coming up with rather innovative ways of selling practices, thinking out the box. Staged exits, partial retirements, all sorts of things where someone wants to stay on for 5 years even, and be involved but have someone else taking the reins. Obviously, the longer you stay behind, the easier it is to ensure that clients don't slip away, but you might find that more difficult to have working for somebody else. But again, every situation is different, and rest assured, you come to us with a tricky situation, we'll find you a solution. We've not yet failed, and we don't intend any of you lot being our first. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. Okay, you could merge another practice, less popular, but could work locally. Again, usually it will be with us, they're on equal sort of footing, same background, same kind of profile, and of course there has to be very good chemistry. There always has to be chemistry between a buyer and a seller. But here, the chemistry is ongoing, it has to be good. Many times, I tell people it's harder than marriage. In a marriage, it's something special. It certainly should be treated that way, and people will work hard to iron out the wrinkles. They'll do their best. When it comes to a merger, for example, of a professional practice or a business, if it doesn't work, people walk out of it. There's less emotional attachment there. So if you do merge, it's something which really has to be thought through very, very, very carefully. Selling to staff. Selling to staff, of course, is going to get the best value for you because, well, they know you. They know the clients know them. It's as an emotional issue, for staff relationship with yourself, it can be very good. For the seller, usually they feel better to sell to the staff. They know it's going to save hands, and they'll be more inclined to keep a discreet hand on the tiller over the months after the sale, which is something which we would highly advise. Unfortunately, not all the time the staff are up to it, nor do they have the access to funds. The last one on the list is the consolidator model, which pops its head up every now and then. I think if you look in the accountancy press online, you'll see there's always someone trying the consolidator model. When it first came out, I was very, very skeptical of it, and I think rightly so. Number one, you've got to always have new equity diluting what's coming in, and the question is how easy is it to sell. And if something goes wrong because on a strategic level, you've trashed your pension basically, as the shares are worthless. You will of course have a better opportunity to grow and value added, and a different support network. But the question is, how are you being paid in terms of exit value? It's not a model which we particularly think would work long term for a lot of people. And of course, if you want to retire, it's definitely not going to work. Question coming in from Jeremy. Would selling to staff at the same time clawback period of 18 months? I see no reason why it shouldn't. It depends on it depends what you've agreed. It could be less. It could be more. It's a fair question. There is, of course, less chance that something is going to go wrong because the staff know the clients. But again, everything's down to the contract at the end of the day, and no two contracts are alike. Okay, so let's looking at a strategy now. Well, the strategy is going to be based on why you're doing this, basically. Are you fed up? Had enough? Too much regulation, perhaps? Do you want to retire? Sell up, take your 10,000 talents of silver and go to the Costa del Sol and buy a whole street of houses. Perhaps you've got to move. Perhaps your partner's got a job in another part of the country, and the job pays far more than you're earning as a bean counter. So they're going to take you with, slip you the length and breadth of the country, and you've got to sell your practice. What is it you want out of the deal? Are you looking for a regular income over the next 5 to 10 years? Perhaps you're looking for a lump sum to pay off a commitment you've got. Or perhaps you'd like to take a lump sum now with an income stream because you want to work part-time. Or perhaps you want something where you can reverse your practice into the purchases practice. It's going to be keep cost low because we only one set of premises, could allow you to retain some sort of salary and receive payments. So there's all sorts of options there. They're just typical sort of things which we encounter. Sometimes the seller will come to us and we said, "This is how I want to do it," and other times we'll have the chat with them, and it'll come out in the wash. And here are the very two important points in your strategy which really have to be handled very, very carefully, because if you get it wrong, it could scuttle the whole thing. Involving the staff. Which ones are you going to involve, and at what stage in the process are you going to involve them? You know, if you're approaching 60 perhaps, over 60, the staff know you're going to have to get out. So are they going to start suspecting something's going on when there's furtive telephone calls and private phone calls coming in? You may have a senior member of staff who you know has to stay, and if this person doesn't stay, there's going to be a problem. It could cost you. You're going to have to pay them to stay on, or you're going to have to buy them, so to speak, to keep them on side with you. When do you tell the juniors? They don't want to feel left out, but by the same token, they want to feel that you value them, and you've not just walked in and said, "By the way, guys, you've got a new boss from tomorrow morning." This is very tricky, and of course depends on the relationship you have with your staff. Remember, the staff are your assets, and it's very important to look after your assets. And of course the last one is, when do you notify the clients? This has to be handled in a manner to avoid flight. Clients don't like to be spooked, especially if you've got a close relationship with the clients. If you've got a personal relationship, as I say, you may be playing golf with them, you may be socializing with them, you may meet them once a week in a social capacity. So this is very, very important. And are you going to tell one client who you know is a good friend but not someone else? You know, once the cat is out of the bag, things, especially if you're in a small business community or a small village or something, the word does get out, and it has to be handled in a way which is going to keep everybody on board. Okay, so we've been digesting quite a lot here. So what's the process going to be? Well, obviously the first thing to do is to register with the broker. We've got a particular way of doing it. We make sure that sellers, and of course buyers as well, but in your case we're looking at the sellers, they have to pre-register with us. The form is available on our website. The reason being that if someone's going to take the 5 to 10 minutes, and it's not more than that, to take that time to fill in the form and tell us all about their practice, it means A, that they're serious about doing it, and they're not wasting our time or their own time, because we don't take money up front. But we want to make sure by the same token that we're not dealing with tire kickers who have absolutely no intention of using our service. But by looking at this registration document, it allows us to understand your practice, which means when we suggest a buyer, and believe you, we've got hundreds of buyers on our books. They're breaking our door down every day, so we can pick and choose, and we'll make sure that we get 3 or 4 buyers for you who we think are suitable, because they've also filled in one of these forms. So it's a bit like matchmaking. To an extent, it is matchmaking, I suppose, and we want to make sure that it's going to be a good match. So as I said, step 2 is we match you with the suitable buyer, and we would arrange meetings perhaps with 2, possibly 3 people. We don't want you to go through too many meetings, because it simply bamboozles you. Usually you'll find out if we're doing our job right after you've met 2 or 3 people. You'll be in a position to choose one of them. It is possible, of course, to have a few buyers lined up. You meet 3, 4 buyers perhaps, and you say, right, sealed offers in an envelope, the best one gets it. If your practice is a pucker practice and you've got buyers who've got money burning a hole in their pockets, I strongly suggest you do that. It does take longer because you've got to meet more people. When you meet the buyer, what we normally suggest is the first meeting is rather informal, perhaps in a local hotel, perhaps around a golf. Check the chemistry in the first meeting. You will know as soon as the chap walks through the door, within 5 minutes of him coming through the door, you will know whether or not this is the right person for you. On the second meeting, which hopefully it'll progress to a second meeting, that's when you get down to business. And after that, usually there's perhaps another 2 or 3 meetings, not a huge amount after that, because now you're opening your books to them. They're going to look through your books, the due diligence, crawl over your books. I mean, it's quite easy to tell whether you got your books match. Look at the VAT return, check the money coming into the bank to the bills that you're claiming you're billing. It is time consuming, and of course it will take your time up, and you'll have the buyer sniffing around. How you explain to your staff why this bloke is sniffing around, that's a separate story. You could also tell me we've got an inspection from HM Revenue and Customs perhaps, or you may wish to do it on a day when the practice is closed. But it does have to happen, and you do have to appreciate that nobody is going to buy a pig in a poke. And then of course it comes to decision time. You have to know yes or no, am I going to go forward or not? And usually the buyer is the one at this stage who is going to say, yes, I like this, or no, this is not for me, and walk away. So it starts off with the boot being on one foot, because you're the seller. You've got the practice. The buyer, of course, will be the one who decides usually whether he's going to go forward or not. And we have a question from Chris coming in here. Which says, is the multiple for a sale likely to be lower if there are no staff and all work is undertaken by the principal? Well, it all depends on the actual figures. Depends. If you were earning nicely on your staff and they were, you're charging them out at the right charge out rate, you're making more profit on them. But ultimately, it depends. If this is what your charge out rate is, and this is what the practice brings in, the multiple is the multiple, however you arrive at that rate. Now, you might have a buyer who'll look at it, Chris, and he'll say, you know what, I don't think these staff are being charged out at a high enough rate, perhaps only double what they're getting paid and not 2.4 to 3 times, which is the kind of figure we typically find. So he'll say, you know what, I can sweat the asset here. I can get more mileage out of this, out of these, in which case he'll be attracted to the practice. Whether that puts the multiple up remains to be seen. But if he's attracted to it and the buyer sees that he can do something with this practice, he might pay that wee bit more because it's got something in it which he can make happen. Similarly, if he's going to reverse your practice, close the office into his office because it's across the road, well, there's a large savings in fixed asset costs, and that could be attractive to him. As I said, every deal is different, and once you get your teeth into the deal, you'll find out exactly all these things. The structure for the deal obviously gets worked out after you've made the decision how you're going to structure it in terms of the period of time, and that's part of the negotiations. We do find ourselves sometimes ending up negotiating with a subtle diplomacy backwards and forward like a pendulum, and when you look at it, we find that between the two sides, all we're arguing about is a couple of £1,000, and you want to bring them together, bang their heads together and say, listen guys, let's stop arguing about this, just split the difference and do the deal. And the favourite of every accountant is the legals. Hopefully there are no solicitors listening. If they are listening, please leave the room now, because we found that in the vast majority of our deals, the accountants do not use a solicitor. Is it right? Is it wrong? If the deal is structured right and the actual contracts and things are drawn up well, it can be perfectly right. But when the solicitors do get involved, if they don't fully understand what's going on, they can absolutely make a hash of things. We're happy to recommend solicitors to you, and there are times when we'd say it is complex, get a solicitor, and certainly by all means show the documents to the solicitor. You have to make sure the solicitor knows about clawbacks and goodwill and all these kind of things. So You can see there's quite a lot to take in there. If you want to sell your practice. I appreciate that some of you will look to sell your practice pretty soon, and some will be looked to selling perhaps the next 2, 3 or 4 years. That's not a problem for us. At Kensington, we believe in building a pipeline of business. We're not here for the quick buck. We believe in a quality service delivered in the right way at the right time. So no doubt you'll be hearing from us, and there'll be no pressure from us. We're not here to sell you double glazing, but we're here to have a chat with you and make sure that when the time comes you get the best service. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. I'm now going to end the webinar, and if anyone wishes to send a question in the next couple of minutes, they're welcome to send them in, or they can phone us up. Just out of interest, before I actually end it formally, how many of you out there do have a speciality? I have a suspicion that not more than 10% of you have got a speciality. There are 1 or 2 names there which ring a bell. I do know who are specialists, but anyone else who's got a speciality perhaps like to put your hand up? Just send me a note through either the questions or the chat box, and we'll see how many specialists there are. Any questions you might have which you think would be of general interest, you can want to send them now so we can everyone can hear the answer. If nothing comes in the next 30 seconds, I will formally end the webinar, and we'll be in touch one way or another. Thank you once again for listening, and I wish you a very pleasant evening. Yes, I've got someone who's sent through this. Yes, I know you're a specialist gentleman there. He doesn't want me to mention his name. Thank you for that. Gentleman who wishes to remain anonymous. Another question has come in. What's a GRF multiple currently reasonable? I think reasonable is in 1 to 1.2. That's the reasonable range. But don't get hung up on what the actual multiple is. I'd concentrate on making sure your practice is tip-top and in sellable condition. Any more questions from anybody? Yes, they're coming in thick and brown, thick and fast. Yep, another anonymous gentleman who wants a telephone call. May not be this afternoon, it might be tomorrow, but we'll get round to you. Thank you very much for that. No more questions? Is that it from everybody? Okay, I'm going to end the webinar now. Once again, another one coming through, the lastminute.com people here. In the general economic climate, is it having a dampening effect on sales? What is happening is that people are taking longer to actually decide to complete the sale. They start the sale and they're just nagging about whether their pension arrangements are actually going to be good enough, and they're just not quite sure, and we'll see what happens with the clients. Are the clients going to clear off? Are they going to stay for the year-end accounts? The sales are taking longer, but they are still underpinned. It is a good time to sell. There's a lot of money out there. There's buyers there who've got the cash burning a hole in their pocket, believe it or not. Cash buyers, they are there. So I say yes, now's a good time to sell. Any further questions anyone got? Any further questions? Still got a room full of people here. We'll just give it a wee bit longer. I'm in no rush to walk into the Manchester rain. Sit at my warm desk for a wee bit longer. Okay, everyone, that looks like there are no further questions. As I say, we all will be in touch. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar, and I wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you and goodbye.